everyone, and thank you for joining us on this broadcast today. My name is Cindy Speaker, and I have with me today attorney Pat Pendleton. He's an attorney in Mobile, Alabama. He practices in the area of workers' compensation. So, Pat, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Cindy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a busy weekend coming up with lots of things with the kids. And so your kids all athletes?
They're all athletes. Three boys are athletes. My girl's an athlete. She's a dancer, and every weekend's busy.
That's awesome.
As you can imagine. So
that's awesome. Well, I'm glad we could snag you for a little bit of time here.
No
so
problem.
We're going to talk about workers' compensation. And first of all, why don't you tell us what exactly is workers' compensation?
Sure. So people always wonder, well, what exactly is workers' comp? Well, workers' comp is nothing more than just a compromise between the employer and the employee. Now, remember who wrote the act. It's not the employees who wrote the act. It's the employers and their lobbyists. But it's supposed to be a compromise where the employee, if they get hurt at work, will get medical treatment right away. In exchange for that, the employee cannot sue the employer for negligence. So that's a compromise that's supposed to be there. And the benefits will be limited to whatever the employee has been injured to, but the compensation, you don't get pain and suffering. You don't get, anything like you would in a normal negligence case. What you get is if you could work this many jobs before, well, what's the impact of the injury now? How many jobs can you now work? Were you at full duty before and now you're limited to light duty? Let's compensate somebody for that difference. Okay. That's what workers' comp is I could go and explain a lot further, but basically it is truly a compromise between the employer and the employee.
Okay, so it sounds like it's kind of a contractual thing as opposed to the employee's not actually suing the employer.
Well, the employee can sue the employer in circuit court here in Alabama, but the act, the Workers' Comp Act, kicks in automatically once an employee gets hurt at work. Okay. And once they get hurt at work, the medical benefits are supposed to begin right away. So yes, you'll be in a regular circuit court, just like a regular lawsuit would be.
I see.
And it's a regular claim, and you'll be an attorney, you'll be representing somebody against against the employer who's represented by an attorney. So it is a legal process.
Okay. What about the benefits? You mentioned that they cannot collect for pain and suffering. What can they collect for?
Okay, well, typically workers' comp involves several benefits. The first one would be indemnity benefits. And that simply is you're injured. What are you supposed to be entitled to regarding the injury itself or the loss of ability to work? How can we measure that? So you'll either be permanently partially entitled to something, permanently totally entitled to something, or temporary benefits. That's the first benefit, and that's money benefits. Okay. That's what we commonly refer to. Well, what's my case worth? Well, that's the biggest part is what are the money benefits? We call those indemnity benefits. Okay. The second part, and probably truthfully the most important part, would be the medical benefits. Somebody gets hurt at work, what are they entitled to medically? That's a really oftentimes more expensive benefit than anything else and more important for the injured employee. Then you also have the benefit of vocational rehab training. If an employee is hurt, they cannot do the job anymore, they can't go back to their career, well, can they be retrained to do something else? Those are the three main benefits in workers' comp. You may hear people get them confused. Well, what am I entitled to? What's my benefits? But all of those are encompassed in the act. They're each separately. So when a claim occurs, if somebody wants to settle the case, each one of those is a separate benefit.
Okay. Yeah. Now, what about medical treatment? Do I treat with my family doctor? How does that all work?
That's a great question. The first thing an employee wants to do when they get hurt is report it. Okay. You got to report it to your supervisor. And the reason I bring it up first is because that should trigger the employer to say, okay, you got hurt at work. I'm now going to choose the doctor that I think you ought to treat with. That's one of the rights the employer has. In that compromise I talked about, the employer can pick the doctor. Okay, so that's an important part. Now, you can also go to your own doctor, but guess what? Who has to pay for that? You do. Okay. So they're going to give you medical treatment with their own doctor. So it typically starts out with an industrial doctor. If the injury is perceived to be more serious, it goes to an orthopedic doctor. And those are most of what we're talking about, orthopedic injuries. It could be neurologists and any other kind of doctor, but those will be paid for by the workers' comp. Whatever is medically necessary and reasonable employer is supposed to pay for it. Now, you're free to go whatever doctor you want, but remember, you got to pay for that doctor.
I see.
So,
I see.
for most employees, insurance, especially nowadays, is quite expensive. Most
Yes.
employees don't have insurance, and so going to a doctor, they have to rely upon the employer's doctor.
Right.
And there you get into well, who's paying the doctor, and that always is a thought that somebody needs to remember. The treatment you get should be the same, but as we all know, many things can come into play there. It may not be the same.
Yeah.
Okay. But to answer your question, the employer should provide you medical treatment. They will pay for whatever is reasonable and necessary. You can go to whatever doctor you want, but you've got to pay for that doctor.
Okay.
So talk about the legal process before. When you have the medical treatment, what happens at court? What evidence comes in? Is it just their doctor, whatever medical records are, what that doctor says? But can I also bring my doctor in? And the answer is yes. You can bring it all in. The judge will consider it all. So
Yeah.
there's some benefit sometimes to going to your own doctor.
Okay. What about if the claim is denied? And are there circumstances in the work environment where a claim would be denied? What are those circumstances?
Yeah, claims are denied all the time. It is to their benefit to deny claims quickly, but it's also to their benefit to accept real claims quickly as well, for they can get that medical treatment under their own watch going. So a claim can be denied at the very beginning. So you report it to your employer, and they say, well, I don't think you were hurt at work. Okay. They report it up to their insurance company, and the insurance company may say, I don't think you were hurt at work. They can deny it. At that point in time, we know that they're not going to give medical treatment.
Yeah.
And we know that you ought to go get your own medical treatment. And then you can file that case in court and contest it, and a judge will decide.
Okay.
Claims are often denied. It's not so much as the entirety of the claim as it is the different parts of the claim. So it may be, well, I hurt my leg at work, and now I'm limping a whole lot, and so now my back is hurting. So the employer and the insurance company may say, well, we're going to accept the leg. We're not going to accept the back.
Okay.
At that point in time, again, we look at medical treatment. You can go get your own doctor if you wish. So if it's denied, your real recourse is to file the case in court. That's your real recourse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. What about if the accident happens to the employee because they made a mistake or they engaged in horseplay or something like that? In other words, if it was the employee's fault in some capacity, does that change the claim?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
If it's the employee's fault, that's okay.
Okay.
We're not holding these employees up to a standard that is above a regular person.
Yeah.
If they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they get hurt, that's fine. It's still supposed to be covered. Now, there are defenses to that. One of those defenses are sometimes an employee intentionally hurt themselves. And that does happen. Okay. Because for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Or maybe did the employee not follow a safety rule?
Okay.
Or not follow use a safety guard. You see these things a lot. That's a typical defense. One of the best defenses out there, and it's employees need to remember, is when you apply for a job with an employer, they will probably ask you questions about your pre-existing health condition.
Okay.
The defense there is if they asked you specifically about a health condition and you did not answer truthfully, okay? If you don't answer truthfully and that part of the body later comes up and that's what the injured part is, well, that's a pretty good defense that they probably would not have hired you if you would have answered truthfully.
Okay.
That's another defense. There's a multitude of defenses, but those are some of the main ones.
Yeah. It's complicated.
It does. It gets quite complicated, but the employee needs to be truthful, everything, as does the employer.
Yeah, sure. Now, what about if the injury is so severe that the employee cannot return to work? Does he collect work comp for how many years or indefinitely?
Okay, so if the injured employee cannot return to work for a certain period of time and then later on returns to work, we call that is temporary total disability. Okay. In that instance, you look at the person's average weekly wage, you'll get 2/3 of that for that period of time. Now, your question would be, what happens if you just say they cannot go back to work at all?
Yeah.
I mean, for the rest of their life, they cannot return to work. Then it would be 2/3 of their average weekly wage for the rest of their life.
Wow.
Okay? That can go on indefinitely, obviously.
Okay.
That is a real argument between the employer and the employee as to what is the most fair thing in the workers' comp act. That's one thing that really favors an employee because
good.
if you it's going to pay you for the rest of your life.
Okay.
What's happening now is there's a lot of discussion that the employers are trying to reduce that age. Okay. But that would be called permanent total disability. You cannot return back to your typical career. And that would be 2/3 of your average weekly wage for the rest of your life. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it sure does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice to see something favoring the employee.
True.
Because a lot of times in corporate situations, things don't exactly favor the employee. So I think that's good.
Absolutely.
But also, I imagine that without an advocate such as you, they may not always get that outright or even know that exists.
Absolutely. And you really hit a point that is, from my profession, it's really important. Most Americans do not have savings. They can go get whatever medical treatment they want. Most Americans cannot survive more than probably a couple months, if that, without income. And so who has the upper hand in this situation? Well, it's certainly the employer and the insurance company. Everybody knows that. Yeah. Now, the act itself, the Workers' Comp Act itself, is intended and is supposed to be construed and applied in favor of the employee. Now, whether or not this always happens, that's a discussion, but that's supposed to be in favor of the employee.
Good. Well, Pat, if someone has questions, I believe they can. You evidently collaborate a lot with Gardberg Law, and I believe you guys are very close in proximity, your offices.
We are. I'm actually about 2 doors down.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
So if anyone has any questions about workers' comp, feel free to call Gardberg at 251-343-1111. And then also at gardberglaw.com. You can get in touch with them. And eventually, that call may come to me. I'll be happy to talk to you as well.
That's right. Just tell them you have a work comp issue, and I'm sure they'll send them over to talk to you. And
correct.
And that'd be great. Well, Pat, you're delightful. I hope that you enjoy your weekend with the kids.
Well, you have a great time at the pumpkin patch as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I understand you're going there with the nieces. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's fall season. Well, thanks a lot for your time today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
And to those of you that are watching on the web, feel free to leave your questions and comments here, and we'll get answers for you. And we appreciate you joining us. We know that there's a lot of things to do in life, and we thank you that you took a few minutes to be with us. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.